Let's continue with our discussion of Abundance by Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson. This is the third part of our interpretation. Recently, an American internet celebrity named IShowSpeed has been live streaming his travels across China, showcasing Chinese cities to a global audience. His content focuses on the real China that Western media doesn't want you to see. His live streams have amazed American viewers. So Chinese cities are this beautiful? In contrast, if you take a walk through the US, you might be shocked by how underdeveloped American cities appear. When Trump first ran for president, revitalizing infrastructure was a core campaign issue. He promised to modernize highways, railroads, and airports. But once elected, he failed to deliver. Not because he didn't want to, but because he couldn't. People often criticize America for shifting away from real industries toward finance and the internet. Why isn't anyone building things anymore? Maybe it's not that people don't want to. It's that they can't. Patrick Collison, CEO of Stripe, once said, "The reason smart people go to Silicon Valley is that if you try to build high-speed rail instead, your experience won't convince any of your friends to leave Silicon Valley." People have lost faith in America's ability to build large-scale projects. In Abundance, Klein and Thompson present a brilliant roadmap for America's clean energy transition. But given the current political environment, it's unlikely to succeed. Today, let's explore why U.S. infrastructure capabilities are so weak. 50 years ago, the U.S. was one of the world's strongest nations in infrastructure. The current weakness isn't due to a lack of resources, technology, or workforce. It's due to man-made barriers. One of the most typical examples is the California high-speed rail. As early as 1982, California passed a bill to study building a high-speed rail line between San Francisco and Los Angeles. But building it wasn't that simple. It wasn't until 1996 that California established a high-speed rail authority to formally begin planning. In 2008, the legislature passed a budget to invest $33 billion, aiming to complete Phase 1 by 2020. Now it's 2025. Not only is Phase 1 unfinished, even a scaled-down version, connecting just 2 agricultural hubs, hasn't been completed. The goal is now to open that small segment by 2033, and the budget has ballooned from $22 billion to $35 billion. It's not a money or technology issue. It's negotiations, delays, and endless approvals. When the rail line passes through private land, the government can't just expropriate it with compensation. The rail authority has to request access repeatedly. If the owner refuses, it ends up in court, dragging on for years. Or take overlaps with existing freight railroads. These companies ban any construction during their peak shipping season from October to December. So high-speed rail projects must wait. Every inch of land and every detail must pass environmental review. That process started in 2012 and still wasn't finished by 2024. We've previously discussed Bent Flibjerg's How Big Things Get Done, which advocates, think slow, act fast, plan everything carefully in advance, then execute rapidly. That method simply doesn't work in California. If you don't know when negotiations or approvals will conclude, you can't plan precisely. Without a plan, there's no schedule. Without a schedule, you're vulnerable to inflation, rising material costs, interest rate changes. Your costs will inevitably rise, and then even the new costs need further approval. Other developed nations, Canada, Japan, Portugal, Germany, all build railways at far lower cost per kilometer than the US. Why is the US unique? Because it's a lawyer nation. There was a time when the US was just as aggressive about development as modern-day China. Beginning in 1965, some far-sighted individuals began realizing that reckless development without safety or environmental consideration was wrong, and took action. A famous lawyer, Ralph Nader, published Unsafe at Any Speed, arguing that the rise in traffic deaths wasn't due to more highways, but to unsafe car designs and lack of government regulation. The book triggered a huge public response. In 1966, President Lyndon Johnson signed the National Traffic and Motor Vehicle Safety Act and the Highway Safety Act, producing real results. Nader inspired a generation of young lawyers and activists known as the Nader's Raiders. They questioned everything. Why allow mining companies to destroy mountains? Why don't coal miners with black lung disease get compensation? Why are oil refineries allowed to dump toxic waste in low-income, minority neighborhoods? Why can oil companies pollute water and coastlines with impunity? The government responded. In the 1970s alone, over 70 environmental laws were enacted, dramatically improving conditions. But the deeper legacy of the Nader's raiders was a new mode of political engagement. If you think the government is wrong, don't wait 4 years for an election. Just sue the government. This became a uniquely American form of democracy. At first, these were good lawsuits. But once a movement becomes a system, it creates an ecological niche. People who do nothing but litigate. Enter the lawyers. Now, the US has twice as many lawyers per capita as Germany and 4 times as many as France. Most aren't suing individuals. They're suing corporations, and especially, the government. The government can't fight back. In fact, lawyers practically run the government now. Though lawyers are less than 1% of the US population, they make up 1/3 of the House, over half the Senate, and about half of recent presidents. More than 1/3 of state governors, lieutenant governors, and secretaries of state are lawyers. These officials are trained to prioritize legal procedure over effective outcomes. Procedural justice is a good thing. But if the system becomes so complex that any action risks a lawsuit, how can anything big get done? Now you can understand why Elon Musk is so eager to shake up the US government. During Biden's administration, even launching a rocket via SpaceX required environmental assessments on the impact to marine life. The hardest-hit industry is construction. Since the 1970s, productivity in nearly every US sector has grown, except construction, where it has declined. New technologies haven't helped. Why? Research shows the reason is excessive regulation and oversight. In the 1970s, building a project was simple. Estimate a budget, bid, win the contract, and start. That's impossible now. For example, worker safety. You must prove workers won't walk on beams, will use safe walkways, and face no falling hazards. You must schedule at least 15 minutes of warm-up exercises daily. All of this generates piles of paperwork to be filed with government, insurers, and clients. Design requirements. Number and location of parking spaces, water recycling quotas, traffic impact, emergency access, skyline integration, seismic risk, endangered species, bird migration, marine mammals, Clean Water Act compliance, national parks, and more. Federal, state, environmental laws, unions, and local communities must all be satisfied. These burdens mean only small projects by small firms get done. Large-scale, interstate projects are dead on arrival. Without scale, productivity remains low. Klein and Thompson believe the US is at a strategic turning point, a chance to fully transition to clean energy. Key technologies are mature. From 2010 to 2020, solar power costs dropped 90%, wind power 70%. Combined with nuclear, they can meet total energy demand. Many homeowners already install rooftop solar panels. In summer, they produce more electricity than they use and can sell the surplus back to the grid. But these efforts are small-scale. The goal is to replace all energy with clean energy and convert all household appliances to electric. Electric cars instead of gas ones, induction stoves instead of gas ranges. All feasible with today's tech. Some states already lead. Washington state gets 74% of its power from renewables. South Dakota hits 84%. But others lag behind. Like Florida, the Sunshine State, with just 6% from solar. Why? It's a Republican state that doesn't promote clean energy. Nationwide transition requires massive power plants and a nationwide grid upgrade. That takes land. Lots of it. The problem is clear. Existing US laws and regulations aren't suited for such a massive transformation. Klein and Thompson recommend special treatment. There's precedent. Border security projects can bypass approvals. Trump used that to build the wall. Biden's 2024 CHIPS and Science Act lets semiconductor plants skip environmental reviews. So the authors suggest similar fast-track approvals for green energy projects. But it's just a suggestion for now. Trump has repeatedly voiced opposition to clean energy. This isn't about changing a few laws. It requires a cultural and political shift. One could say, because of political dysfunction in the US, China might become the first clean energy nation. But we can think even deeper. I've heard people say, China should build infrastructure now, while land acquisition is still manageable and litigation rare, before citizens wake up, making things as difficult as in the US. The logic is that a nation's capacity and style of execution aren't simply matters of will. They reflect its stage of historical development. Political scientist Manker Olson, in The Rise and Decline of Nations, argued that over time, stable societies generate interest groups. Their competition inevitably slows down efficiency. It's structural and unavoidable. Olson wrote, "Every society, regardless of its ideology or institutions, will reward those best suited to it. When America was building, engineers and architects led. Now that it's mature and complex, a negotiation society dominated by interest groups, the most adaptable people are lawyers, consultants, and financial experts. So engineers retreat to less regulated spaces, like Silicon Valley's virtual world. America doesn't prefer lawyers by ideology. It needs them at this stage of development. China, once ruled by engineers, is also changing. The tension between procedural justice and efficiency is a fascinating issue in democracies and rule of law. We shouldn't see America's dysfunction and conclude that authoritarianism is the better system. Nor should we assume China must become America overnight. You can't jump from one extreme to another. Everything depends on balance. That's it for today's content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. If you feel there is value in this, please like, subscribe to this channel, and leave your thoughts or suggestions in the comments section. Let's grow together and read more good books.